So we're here at the Third Stage headquarters with Dr. Serrano, Colin, Marissa, and Jessica joining us remotely, as well as Kyler and myself from the Third Stage team. And these are students from Colorado State University, and we're here today to ask them their perspectives on technology and digital transformation in general, and thought it might be interesting to hear how you guys see the world and what some of the pitfalls and lessons are from your experience and from your research and studies so far in school. So I guess to start, just ask the group, what is it about IT in general that interests you the most? Like why are you here? Why did you take courses in IT? What is it, or why in some cases are you specializing in IT? What is it that drew you to this field?
So my dad's actually a software developer. So growing up, he used to always say, the computer's only as smart as the things that you can put into it. Anything that you know, the computer can work with that, which is crazy that it's changing and that's not really the case anymore, just because, like the AI, for example. But yeah, for me, it was seeing it growing up, making programs. I remember I first asked him to make a website with me. He was like, how do you do that? Like, all like the data and everything that he was putting in. I was like, I thought that was just like, it blew my mind. So,
Yeah.
So you've had an interest since a young age.
Yeah. But now I'm choosing more towards the people aspect, and I do like computers, and I think it's valuable, and I think there's a lot we can do with it. But I think we shouldn't lose sight of like also human interaction.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's very true. Good point. How about you guys, or how about Colin? What do you think?
So it's information technology, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay, so a big thing for me with anything is problem solving, like whether it's a people aspect or it's a technology aspect, and I think like with the evolution of AI and IT, like that's a big thing is problem solving, like figuring out how to, I guess, compress time horizons to make things more efficient, make things move better, operate better. I think that's like a big part of it. That's what interests me. Like I love solving problems. Like just to give like a life anecdote, I like to, at my gym, if something's broken, it's like a smaller gym, so I'll like, hey, Eric, who's the owner, I'll be like, hey, Eric, can I go fix this? And I'll like go fix it. So like that problem solving interests me. So that's, I guess, the biggest part of IT that interests me.
It's great. How about you, Jessica?
I really like that it's constantly evolving. There's always something new to learn. It's always changing. I also really, as I learn more about it, realize how much more efficient it can make business and really help organizations gain that competitive edge by utilizing more IT resources. So that's what I really like about it.
Very cool. And then how about you, Dr. Serrano? How did you get into this field? I know we weren't planning on putting you on the hot seat, but what drew you to technology?
So, I mean, I usually tell us this anecdote, my story to you. So, when I was an undergraduate, my degree of choice, my major was health science, public health. But I was also in the honors program, and they had this position called Communications and Technology Officer, and I wanted to write newsletters for them, so I was like, I want to do it, and so I signed up, and nobody competed with me, and then they're like, you also have to redesign the website, and I was like, what? I was like, but I don't know how to really do that, and I tried to figure it out. I like to problem solve too. But it ended up being this huge fat pixelated button, and then I completely removed the index page after I botched it completely, and then it was like page cannot be found for a little while, and I had about a week to learn how to build a website. So that's how I got in. I just dove in. Luckily the internet was around, even though it was like late 90s, early 2000s. You had to wait a while for pages to load, but there were already tutorials, and I fell in love. Like, it literally gave me butterflies in my stomach, like building the website and seeing nothing and then something, and understanding I could communicate with the world, ideas. And so I finished up that degree program, but my first full-time position was in web development, more the front end design and stuff like that. But yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, it's funny how sometimes you just stumble into it.
Yeah,
you
you
really
really
just
just
plan to be in
do.
technology.
Yeah, because I had stereotyped it pretty hardcore, like as just sitting in a little cubicle, and I think we spoke about this too. It's like
Yeah,
you're not a
absolutely.
creative kind of thing, really. You don't work with people, but I was completely wrong about all of that, because in my first full-time position, that's about all I did was talk to people
Sure.
about what did they want on their website pages, and trying to figure out what designs they would be okay with, and so
Yeah, very cool. So based on just your understanding of technology and technology transformation initiatives, what do you guys think that the biggest challenges are that organizations face when they go through any sort of technology or digital transformation initiative?
There's a learning curve. So, like in my dad's company, they have one old system that they use and a new system. And all the people that have been there for 15, 20 years still use that old system. But it doesn't work as well. There's not as efficient, or like there's not as many options on it. But it's like people don't want to take the next step to learn that new option. But I feel like in long term, taking the time to learn it would benefit so much more because it's constantly changing. But I think it's hard for some people to adjust to that.
Just because they're comfortable, even if the old technology is not as good, they're comfortable with it, so it makes them
Yeah, it
more
works
resistant.
for them. But it's funny because like there's a small group of people that knows this one and they know the ins and outs of all of it, and everyone else who's never used it before is like, why are we using this? This is like not helpful at all. But the people that understand it, I guess they like it, but they don't want to go to the next step.
Yeah.
How about you, Jessica? What are your thoughts? on what-
Yeah, I agree completely. I think one of the biggest challenges being change management. I work for a nonprofit in Larimer County, and very similar to what Marissa was saying is we used a database that was so outdated, we couldn't pull the needed information out of it, which is so critical to raising funds to keep the organization going. So it was really difficult to get everyone on board on leadership and just the organization as a whole to say this is something we really need in order to keep the nonprofit growing. So definitely change management, one of the biggest challenges for sure.
Yeah. What would you add, Colin?
I absolutely agree. Like, I think another big thing, not the biggest thing, but another big thing is just like people are in these motor patterns. Like, you've got people that have been in an organization working with the software for years. I guess now it's probably the time horizon is going to be smaller because technology is advancing faster and faster and evolving. But people are in these motor patterns and they're like, oh, I know how to input this really nuanced note for a client in here. So I click file, edit, copy, paste, but like there's this process and then they get this new thing where like, oh, it's edit, file, paste, copy, all these different formulas in a different order, and they're just like, oh, this doesn't make sense to me, and they're like, well, I like this other one better. So it's kind of a big people aspect, and that's something that I think is a big problem. Is like we need to figure out how to get people to evolve faster or be able to, I guess, train people better to be able to change.
Right. Yeah, very true. It's funny how you guys are gravitating toward a lot of the people stuff.
Yeah, I thought exactly what I'll talk about.
But yeah, you deal with organizations, or we deal with organizations every day that would not come to that same conclusion or don't realize that the people part of it is that important. But you guys intuitively, without as much experience as most organizations have, seem to recognize that, which I find super fascinating.
Right. I think with businesses they work with such we are like with the macro. We have like a macro perspective. We're talking about every business, and the business, each individual business itself. They're like, oh, they're in that mindset. So they're looking at this software and they're like, well, this thing works great. So let's just figure out how to make it work better, or like what can work better. So they're kind of like in a micro mindset. We're in a macro mindset. So I think it's just a difference in perspective.
Yeah, very interesting. What about, so if we shift gears and talk about the more technology focused side of it, what sorts of new and emerging technologies are you guys most excited about? If you look beyond sort of the stuff that's been around for 20, 30 years or whatever, what do you guys see kind of now and going forward as some of the technological trends that you're most excited about or interested in?
Well, I just like the whole aspect of like the school of learning differently and having all the things at your fingertips. Like I think it's beneficial to go to a university and go to those classes, but there's also so many online programs that aren't just here's a textbook, read this. Like you're getting to learn on your own, you're seeing the hands-on of what they can offer you. And like Google has a bunch of certifications you can do, and I find those interesting too because it's like we would have never thought of those before. But also just being able, like in the classes that I'm in now, being able just to have like the recorded lectures and having those, being able to share them with others and re-watching them back if there's something you missed. It's not like if I'm not here and I'm not doing it now, then I can't ever do it. So just like the opportunities that you're given and the times to make things effective for everyone.
Yeah. What do you think, Colin?
I agree. Like knowledge, like the increase in knowledge databases is crazy, and I want to tie that into AI. Like I think AI is super interesting, and I think like right now at my house I'm doing a lot of renovation, so I'm on YouTube a lot looking at like how to redo stairs. So like if I were to like take a picture of my stairs in the future, I feel like it'd be really cool to see like, oh well, the first step would be you got to rip the carpet off, and like, oh well, now you've got, instead of like hardwood tread, you've got like MDF tread. You're gonna have to remove that, and it like gives you all these like instructions. Like you can take a picture of something, it gives you instructions and guidance, or it like can guide you through things. And I think that'll be really cool in the future.
Yeah.
And like putting that towards, I guess, other business processes, like more organizational.
Yeah. Kind of like a more of an immersive approach, or yeah. And how about you, Jessica? What are you most excited about?
I love to see how much more relevant data is becoming, and using that to make the strategic decisions, but also how do we use that for good, and how do we keep people's information safe? So really like the whole bubble of data is really interesting to me.
Yeah. I remember earlier in my career, I just had an aversion to data and just the whole concept of data management. And I just thought, why is data that big of a deal? And now you sort of kick yourself and think, well, it's a huge deal right now. It's like not a commodity, but an asset that a company owns that can be super valuable and source of competitive advantage. So I agree with that too.
One thing I do like about being able to use the data and being able to process it so quickly is HR has moved to more strategic planning and not so much data analytics or operational of like, oh, these are our numbers. Like it's done instantly, and then they can work on things that are more important long term.
Yeah. So rather than doing the manual labor or the manual work of trying to find the data, they've already got the data. Now they can figure out long term how to keep
Instead
people
of
happy.
having people processing it, it's computers that we've programmed we program it once and they can do it 1,000,000 times.
Yeah. And there's jobs now like in HR that are just like workforce analytics. So like we had a guy on my podcast that was the head of workforce analytics for Lockheed Martin. And it's just interesting that that's a whole job, it's a whole department, it's a whole field. And so there's a lot with data right now for sure. What do you think, so if we think about businesses though, like, so that's the stuff like maybe you personally are sort of interested or intrigued by, and maybe it's the same answer, maybe it's different, but what do you think as far as what organizations could benefit from the most? Like if you think about technology that organizations could get the most value out of going forward, like what are some of the things that come to mind with that?
Specifically, I don't have like a program or a thing that would make it better, but I think the time management and being able to strategically or have the strategic advantage to be able to be there faster, to be able to use your resources quicker, to not be the last one to the game, to have that first runner advantage. Mm-hmm. So I think that's the most important part, but the people that use it well are the ones that are getting those advantages. The ones that are stuck in the past, they're dying out.
Yeah.
I totally agree. Like my big thing is kind of like efficiency, crunching time horizon, making the time horizon smaller. Like if you can do something faster and make it easier for somebody to like use your product, like I guess the reason like Netflix put Blockbuster out of business is because like it was more effort to go pick up a movie versus just be like, well, I can have it mailed to my house, so I can just go walk to my doorstep, or I got to drive to Blockbuster. Like making things more efficient is just gonna be the way to go.
Were you alive then?
I was just wondering.
I was alive.
I was like, I didn't know about it. Did your parents tell you about this?
I
About
know.
Did
Blockbuster?
you read about that?
I know. How do you just
What's fascinating about Netflix though is that they used to actually do the physical DVDs and the mail and all that stuff, and so they totally evolved into like what they are today.
Yeah, I was alive when Blockbuster still sold VCRs. I watched VCRs when I was little.
I did when I was 30.
He had one in his dorm room.
Yeah, one like that.
Wow.
Well,
I still watch TV static sometimes.
And what do you think, Jessica? What's the emerging tech that you think businesses could find, or organizations could find the most value out of in the future?
I stick with the data, having the right people, the right processes, well-developed systems that they can efficiently use that data to make decisions, I think is super valuable for businesses.
Yeah, yep, for sure. Definitely becoming of more value, more and more over time, especially as the technology like AI and BI and stuff like that, they can make use of that data.
Yeah, I think a common issue in that space, or what I just see, I read over and over and over again, is that information overload. I don't know if they talk about that in your classes, Jessica. I imagine they do. Is organizations almost have too much data, and if they don't have the know-how to exploit it, I mean, they have a lot of data. So I don't know that it's advantage as an asset is realized, right, until you have the right know-how to really mine that data, right, and make meaningful inferences and predictions and things.
Yeah. Is there software that is able to consolidate and organize massive amounts of data like that, or is that there is? Okay.
Yeah, I bet a lot of the stuff, Jessica, you're learning about does that, like in not artificial intelligence, business intelligence tools that can take data from multiple sources and maybe disorganize and disparate and not integrate it, but it can tie together multiple data sets from different sources.
Yeah, because that could be a huge thing. Like if you're looking at just like a huge wall of data and you don't have any way to interpret it and you don't have a way to organize it, you can't just chunk it out. You have to go through all of this massive amount of data. That can be very daunting. So that can and that's going to take more time than going through each chunk individually. So
yeah, we have one client that's a bigger company. It's one of our bigger clients, and they have multiple locations throughout North America. And they, rather than forcing each part of the business to adapt to one system, they just put a business intelligence tool on top of them all, so that at the corporate level they could see and have visibility into all the data throughout the company. Because they're a very big, well-known company, and they've grown through acquisition, but they believe in keeping the entrepreneurial spirit of each of the businesses they buy. And so they don't believe in that top-down model of just forcing them all onto the same system. So they put in a BI tool instead to accomplish the same thing at lower cost and less risk than if they were to rip out all the systems and replace them with a single system. Yeah. So when you guys think about the next few years, the next 5 to 10 years, what do you think business technology will look like? Like, what do you think some of the major themes or trends are going to be in the coming decade, let's say, as you guys are getting in the workforce?
one of the things I don't like is the HR where they have a AI that kind of sorts through people out, and I feel like it's very artificial.
Talking about onboarding,
Yeah.
like the resumes and stuff,
Mhm.
yeah.
And how they just
Like they pre-screening algorithms and stuff that'll vet you out because you don't have something in the data set that it's looking for.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's I feel like we're missing out on a lot of valuable people because of one aspect, but we're not seeing the full picture because they can only take in so much of what they're given. But seeing the people and talking to them and getting on that second level is so much more valuable. But I feel like some people might not even get that opportunity because they're just shifted through.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess it's always a risk, when it's, even if a human's looking at a resume, you're going to, just because we're human, you're going to have some bias, you're going to overlook something. But it's even more concerning in some ways when it's a computer that the human never even sees it because the computer somehow weeds out or biases in its own way. I think I read something about that recently. I'm not placing it. I don't know if it was a lawsuit or a allegation of bias or discrimination or something as a result of AI. I just don't remember the details of it, but I think that is something that's becoming a ethical concern with AI
I
right
think
now.
maybe one day we can fix that with anything over time. They will change and adjust, but right now it's washy.
Yeah. Yeah, you need humans to intervene to help with the machine learning piece of it so that you can override some of the decisions, and then it can learn from those overrides, and then it can get better as a result.
But again, I think it has to be the right people.
Yeah.
Because the people that don't even see that that's a problem are gonna be like, oh, well, we don't need this, or they'll change it to also fit their biases. So again, it's like taking that out.
Yeah.
Yeah. So do you think, I guess the question was more about like IT and stuff in the next 5 to 10 years, but you definitely do see more of the people lens of, these are the things in maybe the next 5 to 10 years that we'll have to,
We'll be using more,
Address.
but it
Yeah.
may cause more problems.
yeah, may cause more problems. Oh, my goodness, that's
Yeah.
nice.
Yeah. What do you think, Jessica? What do you see in the future if you had to predict with technology?
Kind of like Marissa said, I think even more things are just going to become digitized, and everything is just going to be going more that direction. We saw during the pandemic just how quickly those changes can happen, and I just don't see that really slowing down at all over the next 5 to 10 years. But I also think there will be some things coming that we might not even know exist yet, coming in the next couple of years. So
Yeah, that's exciting to think about. There's stuff that we don't even know about that
it is.
Oh yeah.
So,
Terrifying.
it is terrifying. Because I feel like a lot of what's out now was predicted in like movies in the 80s and stuff. We've talked about that a lot in our in our
Pop
videos.
culture references. Yeah, absolutely. So,
We are pop culture references now.
yeah. Yeah.
What do you see as some of the future of technology?
I think. Man, this is embarrassing. I had a thought and it just
lost
it's gone.
It's all right. Happens. Happens all
Do you
the
mind
time.
asking me the question again? And then I
Sure. And then she could edit out that part, maybe. What do you think the future of technology will look like in the business world in the next 5 to 10 years? Like, what do you think some of the emerging tech is that will most benefit businesses or deliver the most value in the next 5 to 10 years?
So on the most value, I think delivering the most value, like I was talking about earlier, it's people like having trouble changing. Any way to, I guess, streamline the process of people changing, like getting used to change, like any software that can help kind of, I don't know how to say this eloquently, but like help people change the way that they work and they function. I guess like not like physically function, but like the way that the interaction between them and their work, I guess.
Yeah.
Some way to streamline that.
Yeah, you guys got that software?
Yeah.
That Turbo Boost change management?
Right.
Yeah, yeah.
Overnight, like you got it? I don't
Yeah.
know.
I know, because we're so focused on like cloud and even data migration or BI tools, stuff that automates and digitizes certain stuff and makes certain things more efficient. But then there's certain things that are not at all efficient that haven't yet been automated in a transformation like process improvement or changing people's mentality. There's tools to help you, but as far as changing behavior or helping people adapt to the change or buy into the change, none of that's been automated yet.
Oh,
So
I
it's
see.
it's still like a heavy lift on the people and process side, but the technology is getting a lot better, a lot faster than people and processes seem to be able to catch up.
And we do see things like nudge technology in the HR space, and positive reinforcement when it comes to that. So I think that there's a balance between the two, but really that's going to come down to training that middle management tier, because that's really what's going to kind of change the behavior in the course of the culture.
Yeah.
Another thing I remembered when we were discussing on our drive up here that there was like we were talking about AI and I discussed I thought it was a lot like majority quantitative. So once like as technology becomes more, I guess, prevalent, like more like as we become even more digitized, like there's going to be a lack of like qualitative interpretation of data, and I think that's going to be a big bottleneck.
Yeah.
Yeah, I absolutely think there's a huge bias towards quant. In ways that, because even in the research space, there's a huge bias towards quant
I bet.
instead of qualitative research, which is, I think, seen a little bit more frou-frou and not taken as seriously.
Mhm.
But, I've used mixed methods. I've, done qualitative, quantitative, and there's just such richness that you
I
get
bet.
from qualitative.
Mhm.
That I think, if we're on this hyper drive towards a lot of quant, and I think that's in data analytics, it's a lot of quant, all that richness, and we're not going to be training people to think that way or, to look at that space,
Mhm.
and that may be an issue for sure.
Because the quant just gives you like the tip of the iceberg,
Yeah.
but to really understand why the data shows what it shows, you have to also understand the
Yeah,
qualitative.
Absolutely, and I think anytime you collect data, the quality of data you collect is only going to be as good as what you ask. You know, like what questions you have to begin with.
Mhm.
And I don't think we do enough training, and I think I said that in your class, Jessica, on that space. In that very front end space of what data do you need, where can you get it, and then drilling down even further about like, okay, here's a data source, but how did they collect their data? What were their processes? Because I think we really need to see all of that because as part of validating the data, you know, instead of just being like, okay, now I have the data and I have step 1, 2, 3 to how to clean it. There's so much that happens before you even get that data, you know, and the way you think, as Marissa's been bringing up, matters a lot. And you did too. You mentioned micro views and macro views. Take a bunch of people who are micro viewed doing data stuff, and you're gonna miss a lot, even if it's, you know, but even in the quant space, right, you get someone who can think more divergently, more laterally, and their data collection will probably be way more accurate and you know, complete.
Sure, well said, certainly.
As you showed us in your first class about the telehealth, my mom does a telehealth. She's a nurse practitioner and she does telehealth now because we moved from Michigan to Colorado, but she still wants to keep all her patients. And one of the things you said is like, do we need the best cameras? Do we need the best whatever? But we don't. Like talking to the people, like seeing what their symptoms are, and like my mom goes on the phone. I can't even see her patients sometimes. But that's not what matters, and that's not how she can really help them. It's more of like what they need and talking with them, and not just like seeing a problem or having the numbers, but getting that people interaction and being like, oh, so how are you feeling? How is this? And yeah, there's some things you can't do online. Like they have to come into the office to get tests or whatever. But a lot of it wouldn't change person to person.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for sharing your thoughts on tech and where you see it headed and transformations in general. I think we covered a lot of ground, so really appreciate you guys being here for that.